Over 3.6 billion passengers use commercial flights every year. But getting from A to B can be quite a challenge. In this series, we'll witness the bizarre.
I was thinking, what is going on?
The bust-ups.
As soon as he got within arm's reach of him, all hell broke loose.
And onboard terror.
I just wanted to get out.
All captured on camera by travellers around the world. From check-in to the cabin. We'll watch the drama unfold.
We didn't know if we were gonna live or die.
As passengers go crazy on a plane.
Pretty crazy.
In this show, Zorro gets busted in a serious case of mistaken identity.
And that's when I realized that my life was in danger.
Things turn nasty when tempers flare in the air. It's passengers v airline in a row over excess baggage. And travellers find novel ways to keep their costs down. This is the moment an airport is thrown into chaos, with reports of an armed gunman on the loose. Los Angeles Airport, and filmmaker Sam Macon is returning from Atlanta with his girlfriend.
When we landed in LAX, there was nothing unusual walking down to the baggage claim. I was expecting, once we got our bags, that the trip was pretty much done and we were going to get home in a reasonable time.
However, things were about to take an unusual turn.
We're there, waiting for our bags, and I see a gentleman walk past in a Zorro costume. Everyone's just like, hey, that's something you don't see every day. And I immediately told my girlfriend to wait for the bags. I have to go take a picture. He was just walking through the crowd.
Meet Zorro. He's a swashbuckling swordsman, a masked vigilante, and an LA street performer who doesn't wish to reveal his true identity.
I was at Hollywood Boulevard doing the Zorro thing. I had to hurry up and rush to LAX. I was supposed to pick up my associate for my job.
After a hard day of heroics on Hollywood Boulevard, he's meeting a friend who's just flown in with no time to ditch the costume.
I didn't realize the fact that in my costume, that was going to create any kind of disturbance.
I'm following him, and I kind of get bumped by one of several police officers. The gun's already raised.
And I was not looking around, and the noise and the commotion around me had dissipated. And I felt this weird sensation in my body. And I happened to look up, and I saw 3 or 4 police officer cars and about maybe 15 to 20 police officers and a dog. And I'm thinking to myself, who are they talking to? Unbeknown to myself, I didn't realize that they were talking to me.
Police are responding to a call that there's a man wielding a sword outside Terminal 7.
And then they completely surround him.
I put the phone down, dropped down to my knees, and that's when I realized that my life was in danger. Dogs coming at me, sniffing on me, and people approaching me. It felt like a lifetime. I made sure that I didn't make not 1 inch move, because I'd get killed.
The crowd can be heard yelling like, don't shoot him. Leave him alone, don't kill him. To have a bunch of police with their firearms drawn It's a stressful thing to witness.
Police soon realise that despite the costume and sword, Zorro has come in peace and isn't a threat.
As soon as they picked me up and they told me that they made a misunderstanding, they let me go. Within that 2-minute timetable, all chaos broke loose. That's when the real problem happened.
We start to hear people say, someone's got a gun. There's a bomb.
People panic. The cops have a bigger problem to solve. On every plane, there's always one person you can turn to. When they first appeared, they were recruited from the nursing profession, and the concept behind their role remains safety. The selection process remains intense and rigorous. They are still the angels of the skies, on hand to serve, help, and guide. But the cabin crew role, the passengers, and the problems have all changed, and the job is not what it was. So we've opened our confessional cabin and invited crew in to open up about the reality of flying. Oh, and some of their identities have been hidden to protect the innocent. Cabin crew have seen it all, but there's one thing they witness a lot. Passengers trying to join an exclusive club that allegedly only 5% of people are part of.
When people find out what you do, oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I do this. The first question, before they say anything like, oh, that must be great, or where have you been? It's, are you in the Mile High Club? And you're like, well, yeah, between first and second service. Guess what I do with my break?
Why anyone would want to go and do it in the toilet, because they are disgusting places. No one would want to linger in an aircraft toilet, let alone have their naked bits popping up and down on the surfaces.
I don't get it. I find it actually quite repulsive.
This one time, this 18-year-old young lady turned into a bit of a sexual predator as she'd actually decided she was going to join the Mile High Club, and she didn't mind with who. Cabin crew caught her in the toilets the first time, and this girl was brought out with a gentleman. The second time, with another gentleman, there was more of a queue, so that when they got brought out of the toilet, there was more applause. And then the third time, they were interrupted again. But there was 3 different men that she tried to join the Mile High Club with, and unsuccessfully. The girl was actually travelling with her parents on holiday to Disney World, and decided to have a good ride of her own on the airplane.
I have walked down during night flights and witnessed someone's head in a man's lap with a blanket over her head, moving up and down.
Those blankets don't cover anything. We know exactly what you're getting up to if you're trying to join the Mile High Club.
See, the other thing you do is say, excuse me, sir, can you please put that away, because it's really not worth looking at.
But it's not just passionate passengers hooking up at high altitude.
Some long-haul aircraft have crew rest areas, and I know that crew have joined the Mile High Club in the crew rest areas. I heard of a story on a flight going into Heathrow. They were a couple, a girl and a guy. They'd not been together very long, so still in the honeymoon period. And there was quite a lot of turbulence, so the captain decided to strap them in a little bit earlier than usual. So they were down together in the back galley. It was night time, it was dark, the cabin was in darkness, and they started to get a little bit frisky with one another as they touched down in Heathrow. She said it was the best orgasm that she'd ever had, so, yeah.
Next, a bad case of air rage descends into violence. We're in Lebanon, and Anas Abu Zaina is on board a Middle Eastern Airlines flight from Beirut to London Heathrow.
I was hoping for a quick, relaxed flight because I was really tired. However, it was really packed and I had a baby sitting next to me. So that wasn't the ideal flight I was hoping for.
However, Anas soon realises a noisy baby is going to be the least of his worries.
I noticed as soon as I boarded the plane, a man boarded after me. He was really aggressive and verbally abusive from the moment he stepped in. He was verbally abusive to one of the flight attendants before even the takeoff. So I remember she asked him to put his bag in the overhead bin, and he aggressively refused.
The abusive man also catches the attention of fellow passenger Mo Hajar.
You could tell that there was something wrong with him, and obviously it didn't take long on the flight for something to erupt.
The problem started when the passenger in front of that guy asked the flight attendant to change her seat because that man was hitting the back of her seat or something like that. And as soon as the flight attendant came and started talking to that woman, that guy got really abusive to them and he was swearing at them. And this is where it got really scary. He punched one of the female flight attendants, and for me that was the point that I felt I had to get involved.
After the air stewardess had been hit, Mo begins filming and Anas confronts the man.
I told him, how could you hit a woman, you know?
The air hostesses, they all started getting involved, trying to push them apart, hold them, trying to control them.
He shifted all his anger and fury towards me. So he was very verbally abusive, he was shouting, swearing again, and he actually tried to reach out to me, but a couple of passengers actually stopped him.
Eventually, cabin crew managed to defuse the situation, but things are far from over.
He took a seat and he kept turning around, swearing and threatening. And then he asked one of the flight attendants to go to the toilet. And at that moment, I realized he was up to no good because my seat was just right in front of the toilet. I felt that he was coming to do something to me.
As soon as he got within arm's reach of him, all hell broke loose.
Trapped in mid-air with nowhere to run, Anas braces himself for round 2. It used to be that what happened on a flight stayed on a flight, but mobile phones put pay to that. So we've asked travel vloggers, pilots, former cabin crew and security experts to take a closer look at flights, fights and airport antics caught on camera. Nowadays, wedding proposals reach new heights. In Miami Airport, US Air Force member Aaron Vergara has an elaborate surprise for girlfriend Kayla.
This girl's waiting for her boyfriend and she arrives at the airport. People from the flight start handing her a rose for each month of the year that he was away.
This is for August. This is for September.
After all the roses, he's there with the final rose.
We haven't seen him in those 8 months.
And then gets down on one knee and asks her to marry him.
Will you marry me?
It's just really romantic and really cute and just a really unique thing to do.
Love is also in the air at Manchester Airport, with a dancing flash mob who've got a surprise for holidaymaker Karen.
So this passenger was just coming off of her flight to meet her girlfriend, and then look what she ended up with. We see one guy starting dancing, and then 2, and then a bunch of guys joined in. Security tries to stop them, and then we realize that security is part of the flash mob.
The grand finale is a proposal from girlfriend Chops, who's relieved to hear an emotional yes.
I did not see that one coming, and look, I can't. That's too much. That was so sweet.
On board this Austrian Airlines flight from Vienna to Bologna, this confused passenger is wondering what's going on.
We see a woman being asked to stand, and the cabin attendant is making a PA announcement.
There's a special message for you.
And we realize that she's handed the mic over to a passenger.
And it started off with a man coming on to the PA system, sounding very nervous indeed.
It's me, Anatoly. I told you I was going to ask something.
To start off with, she doesn't know what's going on.
I'd like to tell you something, and I want everyone to hear it.
But as it's starting to dawn on her what's happening, she's just big smile from ear to ear. Fantastic to see.
Life is full of surprises. And this proposal is just another one to share together.
And she starts getting emotional. And then he comes out from the front galley with a huge bouquet of roses. And it's all a lovely engagement on board.
The crew was coming with champagne afterwards to congratulate them and wish them good luck. All of this has taken quite a lot of planning from his point of view, so kudos.
The pilot on board this flight from Detroit to Oklahoma City has got a very important announcement.
My name is John, and assisting me today is Captain Carlos.
We see a pilot. He starts talking about the flight.
Once we get the air, wheels up to wheels down, 2 hours and 30 minutes.
And then you can see him get really nervous in the middle of it.
Winds out of the south, about 10 miles per hour, good visibility, via clouds.
And then he asks his cabin attendant girlfriend to marry him.
Why don't you come up here, please? I want to spend the rest of my life in her together.
That captain, he was confident because what if she says no? That would have been a really awkward flight.
Back at LA Airport, and police have captured Zorro. But they soon realise he's a street performer with a toy sword. However, the police are about to have a much bigger problem on their hands.
They got a call on the radio stating that there was a gunman or a sound that took place that sounded like gunfire.
A call comes through that gunshots have been heard at Terminal 8, and the police turn their attention from Zorro to a suspected gunman. Sam Macon is caught up in the chaos.
Immediately, I see several of the police officers come running back in. Tension seems to bubble up amongst the crowd. And then we start to hear people say, someone's got a gun. There's a bomb.
Chaos kept going back and forth, and I was trapped in the middle. I was sitting there on the bench, wondering what the heck is going on, and I'm shocked.
Then the crowd really starts moving. Way more people start running down the stairs from the inside of the terminal. I had to say, let's get the hell out of here.
There's widespread panic due to reports of an active shooter in 4 different terminals. Armed police scour the airport, and dogs are deployed. Hundreds of petrified passengers begin self-evacuating via unauthorized exits and share the unfolding terror on social media.
We start moving quickly, and it's really crowded there, and people really are starting to get worked up. People aren't getting shoved to the ground. Airport security people are yelling, this isn't a drill, get moving, keep moving.
Police officers was telling everybody, no, go left, go right, go this way, go that way.
Cop cars and security is driving all over on the road. There are these people pushing and shoving and yelling, get moving, let's go. There are some people that clearly thought that they were in the middle of the next terrorist attack.
It's only when Sam and Zorro finally make it home that they learn the truth about the incident.
Some individual made a phone call that stated that there was some gunman running through the terminal. There was no gunman whatsoever in the area at all.
LA Police Department later confirmed that the reported gunshots were merely just loud noises, and they were hunting a non-existent gunman. Reports on social media had sparked pandemonium, causing nearly 300 flight delays and the evacuation of an entire airport.
It's a pretty classic example of rumor and mass hysteria accelerating to the point where people start acting irrationally and pushing each other around.
Luckily, there were no serious injuries during the evening of mayhem, which all began with a mix-up over a masked Zorro.
My default advice for most people would be to go to the airport not in costume. They should wear clothes like they're going out in public.
You're a fucking piece of shit! Shut up!
This is the scene when a man suffers abuse for speaking Spanish.
Shut up, you fucking piece of shit! Shut up!
Reno Airport in Nevada. And Hector Torres is traveling back home to Florida from a business trip.
It was a very typical day in Reno. I was patiently waiting for my flight to arrive. And I basically have a tradition. I call my mother before every single flight. My mother, she speaks Spanish. Her English is not as strong. So when we do communicate, we communicate in Spanish. It's our shared language. Several minutes into the conversation, I start hearing some really nasty comments over my shoulder about how these Spanish people, we're in his country and we basically need to go back to where we came from. It was insulting beyond words. So I told my mother, Mom, I think I have a problem. I need to handle it right now.
Hey, now you're gonna...
Now he's fucking recording me.
Of course.
Bullshit.
When I turned around, to confront him, and I saw that he was a disabled vet, immediately, I was disarmed because I could not be aggressive towards him. So I tried to address him as a human being, and unfortunately, that fell on deaf ears.
You just assaulted me. You know that, right?
I just assaulted you.
You just assaulted me.
You are a fucking piece of fucking shit.
What did I do to you outside to speak to my mother in her language?
I wanted to get through to him. I wanted to communicate with him and establish some type of rapport.
Unbelievable.
And he just wasn't interested.
Fuck you. That's a piece of shit.
I was upset, just like anyone would be in that situation. But I did continue to try to calm him down and communicate with him. But he just kept ramping up the hatred level.
Talking that fucking stupid Spanish around here when everybody
Spanish.
else is fucking English-speaking American.
I've dealt with racism in the past. Typically, it's more subliminal in nature.
You're a fucking piece of shit, you fucking spit.
This was the most overt case I had ever experienced.
Wow.
Shocked and saddened at what he's hearing, Hector keeps recording, which angers the man even more.
You are a piece of fucking shit.
One thing that people have to keep in mind when I'm asked, hey, why did you keep on filming? Like, you're antagonizing him. Like you're part of the problem. No, I am very aware of how this world works. I knew that if I stopped filming at that very second, he would change the story.
Somebody help me.
Help you?
This guy's fucking attacking me.
All the people around were in shock, to be quite honest. They were paralyzed.
Shut up!
I need an apology.
Shut up!
I will as soon as you apologize.
Shut up!
Apologize.
Shut up, you fucking piece of shit! Shut up!
Apologize.
Fuck you.
I was hoping for an apology. I didn't actually expect one, but I was hoping for an apology.
Apologize.
Stop. Fuck. You apologize to me. You apologize to me, you fucking freak.
You insulted my mother. You're gonna apologize.
Nobody.
I kept my cool 100% of the time. I never deviated from staying calm.
Eventually, witnesses call the airport authorities.
Fuck you!
When the officers showed up, I instantly got the sense that they knew pretty much the entire story. But again, the gentleman in the wheelchair still tried to change the story.
This guy's harassing me.
As expected, as I knew he would.
He's recording me and laughing at me because I don't know what the hell the problem is.
So it was great that I had the evidence, which I immediately showed the officers. The officers basically gave me the option to have him arrested, which I decided to pass on. This was less about me getting revenge and more about an opportunity for me to show him that minorities are not evil, and I decided to not press charges.
The man was escorted back through the terminal, and the airline refused to let him fly that night. Across the world, every day, millions of people jump on a flight. The cost of a plane ticket has more than halved since 1970. Low-cost airlines have made it even cheaper and opened up the skies to everyone. But there was a time when flying was a rare luxury, when getting on a plane was the pursuit of only the wealthy or businessmen, when planes had proper tables and the food was served silver service. And there is one British man who remembers that time well. Fred Finn has flown the most supersonic passenger journeys ever. and over 13 million commercial flight miles.
I've flown extensively around the world, but more so probably through and around Africa. Flying through Africa, very hair-raising at times. My very first flight, I think I remember distinctly, was on a DC-3, very beautiful old aeroplane. I think there were goats and a few chickens, and the seats pulled out from the side of the aircraft like the seats on a train. Yeah, seatbelt, yeah, okay, on another aircraft. But one of my most memorable flights was a big thunderstorm, lightning, the whole works from Johannesburg to Malawi. And it's the only time that I've actually pushed myself up in the seat because Blantyre Airport is surrounded by mountains. And I could see almost what were ants crawling on the ground, so I knew I was close. And when I landed, I asked the pilot, why didn't we go back to Johannesburg? Fred, I've got a party to go to. Really? Thank you.
And if you ever encounter any in-flight frights, Fred's got a tip on the best place to sit.
The safest seat you can find is at the back because the black box is there and no pilot I know can safely reverse his plane into a mountain.
Next, passengers unite in a battle over baggage that leaves them grounded. We're in Colombia, and Laura Medina and her 5-year-old son are taking a domestic flight from Medellín to the capital, Bogotá.
Fuimos al mostrador de Viva Colombia con nuestras maletas, nuestra maleta de bodega, y pues ya esperábamos que nos dieran nuestro pase para pasar el otro filtro.
Laura is on the return leg of her journey, and on the way out, the same airline had allowed her 2 pieces of hand luggage on board. However, this time, they're saying they exceed the size allowance and she has to pay.
Pues mi primera reacción fue que yo le dije que no iba a pagar esas maletas. Con estas maletas al lado de nosotros estaban pasando una cantidad de gente con maletas más grandes que las de nosotros.
Laura refuses to pay, so the check-in attendant writes this on the boarding pass, which alerts cabin crew to the situation once she's on board.
Y ahí empezó pues nuestra pesadilla ese día.
Also on the flight is journalist Sebastián Díaz López, who's filming the following events.
Le pedimos la colaboración a la señora. Las dos opciones son o cumplir con las reglas y el pago del equipaje o sencillamente desabordar el avión.
Lo primero que yo pensé fue, bueno, ¿qué es lo que está pasando? Empezamos a hablar ahí con la gente que estaba alrededor mío, de las otras sillas, de las otras filas, y la gente empieza a levantarse.
O sea, como no sabíamos qué hacer. La gente a nuestro alrededor empezó a gritar y a decir que cómo así, que cómo se iban a dañar todo eso por una simple maletica.
No, esto es injusto, qué injusticia.
The airline insists she pays for one of her bags at the cost of 89,000 pesos.
Un tiquete, por ejemplo, en Viva Colombia vale 60, 70 mil pesos por mucho. Entonces estaban cobrando mucho más por la maleta que por el mismo tiquete.
This is the equivalent to 23 British pounds, but Laura doesn't have the money.
Entonces mi sentimiento se fue de asombro al enojo. O sea, yo me fui, eso a nosotros nos pareció pues una locura. O sea, no nos cabía en la mente cómo iban a hacer eso.
Concerned she'll annoy the passengers with even more delays, she is, instead, blown away by what happens next.
Señora, sin pena, que es para el beneficio de todos.
Uno de los pasajeros cogió su gorra y empezó a pasar por cada uno de los puestos recogiendo la plata pues que todo el mundo le estaba dando.
¿A quién te va a colaborar?
Yo en ese momento tenía sentimientos encontrados, porque a pesar de que la gente me estaba ayudando o nos estaba ayudando a hacer la recolección, en el fondo nosotras seguíamos diciendo que era injusto.
Sí, es que hay maletas más grandes y van a bajar a una señora con dos. Ningún pasajero se enoja con ella, sino que todo lo contrario, la respaldan además. La respaldamos, entonces 100 personas en contra de 5 o 6 personas de Viva Colombia.
In scenes of solidarity, they collect 100,000 pesos, more than enough to pay for the bag. But the celebrations are short-lived.
El empleado iba a Colombia. Cuando yo fui a pagarle una maleta, me dice, no, ya no le vamos a recibir porque ahora me tiene que pagar una segunda maleta.
The airline is saying her son's backpack is also too big and she has to pay.
No, eso fue en ese momento, yo me sentí pues aún más indignada, más humillada.
No me dejaron ni pagar.
Ahí es cuando la gente se rebota y le dice, pues ¿cómo así? Te acabamos de pagar por una maleta. ¿Qué es lo que está pasando?
¿Pero por qué no puede viajar?
No, pues sin permiso.
Pero ya le van a pagar la maleta.
Pero no puede ahorrar. No tiene permiso, no puede ahorrar.
Cuando los pasajeros del vuelo se dieron cuenta que yo me volvía a devolverles la plata, se pusieron aún más bravos y la verdad yo ya no sabía más qué hacer.
With a plane load of outraged passengers and an airline refusing to fly, it's about to reach breaking point.
La señora ya tiene la plata. Ya puede ir a pagar para que despeguen.
The passengers on the Colombian flight were clearly not happy, but dealing with irate customers is all too familiar for cabin crew. So we're back in our confessional cabin with a message from crew that they're hoping we'll all take on board.
Passengers can make or break our day.
As soon as they get on an aircraft, their personality changes. I can remember once a passenger coming on board and going absolutely psycho at me because we didn't have his choice of newspaper.
I've had passengers moan at me when we've arrived early. The passenger's come up to me and he's been shouting abuse. Why have we landed so early? Are you going to sort my taxi out for me? There's just no pleasing some people.
I had one particular woman, she kept pressing her call bell and saying, get me this, get me that. And I was saying, waiting for the please or the thank you. And she said, get me a Coke. And I went, please? Get me a Coke. Now. So I went into the galley, I got her a Coke and I shook it as much as I could. She opened it and the whole thing exploded in her face and she started crying. So I just said, sorry, bad turbulence.
I think my message to passengers that abuse cabin crew, first of all, remember we serve your food.
Always be very courteous. Always say please. Always say thank you.
And it is against the law to ignore your cabin crew members. We are to be obeyed. We are like mini dominatrix.
On a flight from Beirut to London Heathrow, an angry passenger has lost control and hit an air stewardess. Passenger Anas Abu Zaina leapt to her defence.
I felt I just need to stop this guy.
But now he's in the firing line.
After a few minutes, he asked one of the flight attendants to go to the toilet. And at that moment, I realized he was up to no good. I felt that he was coming to do something to me.
Fellow passenger Mo Hajar is filming on board.
Everyone was convinced he needed to go to the bathroom, except me. I was not convinced. I had my phone at the ready and I started videoing before he even got towards me.
I was worried about the baby next to me as well. There was a young mom and this one-year-old baby. So that's why when I saw him walking towards me, I stood up.
As soon as he got within arm's reach of him, he threw a punch at him. And when he punched him, all hell broke loose.
I've never been in a serious fight before, but I just wanted to defend myself, defend the mom and the baby next to me. And I remember that mom, she was protecting her baby like that.
I just couldn't believe what was going on, but I was just shocked. I was like, what is going on here?
Amidst the chaos, cabin crew and passengers pull the men apart.
People were shouting, people were screaming, people telling him to stop, and one of the flight attendants was actually, shouting at him. This is wrong. What are you doing? Can you stop? This is ridiculous. Everyone was frightened, everyone felt threatened.
With crew and passengers' safety at risk, the pilot has to take drastic action. Unbeknownst to the passengers, instead of continuing to Heathrow, he's making an emergency landing in Istanbul.
No one actually knew what was happening. Everyone was just curious and anxious. What's going on? Everyone's asking questions, but no one really answered us.
As soon as we landed in Istanbul, about 3 or 4 policemen came. The flight attendants took them to the passenger and they took him off the plane.
The man was ejected from the plane, and after a 3-hour delay, Anas and his fellow passengers continued their flight to Heathrow.
Before this flight, I've never been in a similar situation, but I believe I'm a kind of person who does get involved when needed. This guy was a threat to other passengers, he was a threat to the flight attendants, and he scared a lot of passengers and disrupted their journey.
We're back with our travel specialists, casting their expert eyes over the weird and wonderful world of flying, caught on camera. Protests take place all over the world, but when they're around airports, they can cause major disruptions. London Heathrow serves 78 million travellers a year and counting. But these climate change campaigners are not in favour of their expansion plans.
We've got a protest taking place in the tunnel that connects the M4 motorway outside London Heathrow to terminals 1, 2 and 3.
He's laid under the van. There is clearly a big traffic jam building up. Police arrived at the scene.
You close that tunnel and you've closed access to terminals, and therefore you're going to have a lot of flight delays.
If you're on the way to the airport, and often you cut it quite fine for a flight, you'd be so frustrated. I'm sure a lot of people probably missed their flights that day.
The protest lasted for 3 hours and resulted in 3 people being charged for unlawfully blocking a tunnel.
The third runway at Heathrow is something that's very contentious and has brought out anger in a lot of people.
11 months later, and these activists aren't taking the issue lying down.
This group of people dropped to the floor and they're pretending to be dead.
Here we've got the famous die-in, where people have decided to go to the passenger terminal and die on the airport floor.
It's all a bit bemusing.
They're blocking access to the check-in desk.
And people are just clambering over them. For passengers who are just trying to get somewhere, they must just be like, what's going on?
Their protest is centred around inconveniencing the people.
And many of them are feeling a little bit frustrated as they have to tiptoe around these people.
It's a bit of a minor inconvenience to people who are trying to get past them, but actually the scenes would become something totally different if you saw the police trying to drag these people out by their hair.
So they've decided to allow this protest to take place for a short period of time, and that's been deemed the safest way to do things.
Although it may have caused disruption, there were no recorded arrests. At Los Angeles Airport, there's a demonstration taking place opposing President Trump's travel ban.
Where better to protest against a decision to restrict people coming to your country than at an airport?
This is not a hostile protest. They're singing and chanting. However, there are many security policies that are in place at airports, especially post 9/11.
From a security point of view, of course, we have to view this as a possible distraction.
Strikes at the airport will affect flights greatly. This can involve the agents that are checking you in, airport security, or the ground handlers. And we need all of these people to get a flight off the ground.
And this is the challenge for airports. How do you keep things peaceful? And how do we maintain the values of the society that we have chosen to live in and that we cherish?
Protesters gathered every day for 2 weeks, and 2 people were arrested for blocking a roadway. Back in Colombia, and the battle of the baggage rages on. The plane is still grounded at Medellin Airport, despite the passengers clubbing together to pay for Laura's so-called oversized bag. The airline has now decided she needs to pay for a second bag, and the passengers are angry. Journalist Sebastian is on board and filming the commotion.
Ahí es cuando la gente se rebota y le dice, pues ¿cómo así? Te acabamos de pagar por una maleta. ¿Qué es lo que está pasando? Entonces estábamos grabando, le pedimos muestre la maleta y ahí es cuando ella dice, mire que son maletas de mano, que es un equipaje de mano, son maletas de niño. Y claro, la gente ve una maleta chiquita.
Hay maletas más grandes, miren, no llevo nada. Media maleta va vacía.
La gente decía, por ejemplo, ¿cómo van a bajar a una chica que ya pagó su tiquete y que ya estamos a punto de abordar cuando tiene evidentemente maletas que son de mano? Y ahí es cuando nos damos cuenta que todo era una farsa, no vamos a pagar ninguna maleta más. Y ustedes, señores, Viva Colombia, tienen que arrancar porque tenemos compromisos que hacer y además están vulnerando los derechos de los pasajeros.
With passengers up in arms, the airline calls for reinforcements.
Los de la aerolínea llamaron a la policía para que pues, atendieran para bajarnos del avión.
Ya pago,
¿Y por qué va a pedir disculpas? No tiene nada que ver. Eso es una humillación.
Laura explains the situation to the policeman, and he isn't impressed.
El policía hizo cara de no puedo creer esto, para esto me llamaron.
Cuando el policía llegó y vio tremenda escena tan patética, se puso en realidad del lado de Laura.
With a plane load of people and the police deeming it unfair, the airline have no choice but to relent and accept the money for one bag.
Pagamos la maleta con mucho enojo y molestia, porque igual sentíamos que era injusto, pero aún así pues la pagamos porque teníamos que resolver esto de alguna forma.
And the man who instigated the whip round is happy too, as he gets to keep the change.
A la boleta. Amigos, sobraron 3.000 para la boleta. Muchas gracias.
Finally, the plane takes off. But it's left a lasting impression on Laura and Sebastian.
Yo la verdad nunca había vivido una situación como tan ridícula en un avión. Que se levante alguien, un muchacho esta vez, recogiendo plata para pagar una maleta que era de mano.
La aerolínea lo que hizo fue llamarme un tiempo después a decirme que la culpable había sido yo por no haber pagado las maletas de mano. Entonces ya nunca más volví a viajar por esta aerolínea de Viva Colombia.
Being stung with hefty excess baggage fees is a common problem for passengers all over the world. However, there are some travellers who've got inventive ways to fight the system. In Melbourne, Australia, Penny Higgins doesn't want to pay for her extra luggage, so instead, she creates this one-woman fashion show. On the plane, she wore a belt, 6 different tops, a skirt, 2 pairs of shorts, 2 pairs of leggings, a bra, and a beaded bikini top. Problem solved. In Magaluf, this guy's been on a stag do and is returning back to the UK. The airline is saying his bag is too big for carry-on luggage, but he's determined to prove it isn't. Now all he's got to do is get it out. His perseverance pays off, and the airline let him take the bag on board. But even if your bag adheres to the size and weight allowance, there are some items that are forbidden on a plane. Sharp objects, flammable liquids, and anything that could be deemed as a dangerous weapon. Security at Budapest airport are on the ball and spot this suspicious-looking item planted in the man's bag when he's travelling home from his stag do.
Just before we left our hotel.
It may have given his mates a laugh, but it does prove you should be vigilant when packing your own bag.
I want that back. I paid good money for that.
In this show, we've seen panic, punch-ups, and people power. But with air travel on the rise, more passengers mean more problems. And more problems can lead to more people going crazy on a plane.